So how do you even begin to get your head around a country with over 8 billion people, a place with thousands of years of history, countless cultures all living side by side? I mean, it's a huge question, right? And today, we're going to dig into a really fascinating way to start finding some answers.
Okay, look at this. On the left, you've got this ancient Indian idea of the world, the seven dweepas. It's not about borders. It's a mythological, almost spiritual map. And then, bam, on the right, you see a modern political map, super precise, all about borders. The journey from that spiritual world to this political one, well, that's pretty much the story we're diving into.
So yeah, that brings us right to the heart of it. The big question for this explainer. In a nation with literally a billion stories, where do you even start?
Well, the source material for this actually points to a really cool approach. It basically says the best way to understand India isn't by hunting for simple answers, but by learning to ask the right questions. And this quote really lays it all out. It's such a powerful idea, right? Understanding isn't something you just receive. It's an active process. It's not about memorizing a bunch of facts. It's about you, about me, engaging with the material, bringing our own experiences into the mix. And that's exactly the approach we're going to take today.
All right, let's jump in with our first question. And this one is all about the land itself. How has this huge subcontinent been imagined, drawn, and ultimately, controlled over the centuries?
You see, maps are never just neutral pieces of paper. Not at all. Ancient maps, they often served a religious, or you could say a cosmological purpose. They were mapping a spiritual world. But the colonial maps, whoa, they were tools. They were tools for conquest, for locking down trade routes, and for finding and exploiting resources. They were literally instruments of power.
Just take a look at this ancient map from the Mahabharata. It shows a world centered on some mythical mountain, surrounded by a salt ocean and then a milky ocean. I mean, come on. This is a map of belief. It's a way of understanding your place in the entire cosmos, not just your address on a piece of land.
So that really makes you wonder, right? How does just drawing lines on a page become this massive exercise of power? Well, think about it. Defining a territory is always the very first step to controlling it. For the colonial powers, a detailed map wasn't just interesting geography, it was a blueprint. It was a blueprint for administration, for taxes, and for military strategy.
Okay, so when you have that kind of external control, a reaction is pretty much inevitable. And that leads us right into our next chapter, the massive struggle for independence and the forging of a brand new modern Indian nation.
The Indian independence movement, it wasn't this single unified thing right from the get-go. Not at all. It was actually a really passionate and often pretty contentious debate among Indians themselves about what freedom even meant and what was the best way to get there.
And you can really see that debate in these two main factions. So on one side, you had the moderates, people like Dadabhai Naoroji. They believed in a more gradual reform, through petitions and dialogue. But then you had the extremists, like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who are demanding full self-rule or Swaraj. He's the one who famously declared, "Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it." Much more direct.
And here's the thing. These debates didn't just stay in stuffy meeting rooms. They absolutely galvanized a nation. They ended up leading to these huge mass movements like the Salt March, where millions of ordinary people, we're talking women, students, farmers, took to the streets, all uniting under that single cause of freedom.
But here's what's crucial to understand. The fight for freedom wasn't just against an external ruler. Oh no. There was an equally important struggle happening within Indian society, a fight for social justice and for equality. I mean, just to put it in perspective, at the time of independence, India was facing this staggering level of rural poverty. We're talking about an estimated 55% of the population. This wasn't just some political challenge on a piece of paper. It was a profound human crisis that absolutely had to be addressed.
And, of course, leaders rose to meet that challenge. People like Jyotiba Phule, who fought tirelessly against the deep-seated injustices of the caste system. He championed education for lower castes and for women because he believed their empowerment was absolutely essential for any real progress.
And another reformer, Pandita Ramabai Saraswati, gave voice to another critical battle. Listen to this quote. She argued that the real path to women's rights was through self-reliance, through education and economic independence, because that's what would make it possible to refuse injustice, not just endure it. And you can see the direct line from that fight to today. It's incredible. The spirit of reformers like Ramabai is so alive in modern movements, like women's self-help groups. These are groups where women organize for their own economic empowerment and social support, literally carrying that torch of self-reliance forward. So you have all these different struggles, right? For political freedom, for social equality, for women's rights, and ultimately, they all converged. They were all woven together into one single foundational document, the Constitution of India.
And this is the moment. Independence is finally declared. But then what? I mean, how do you turn the dreams of an entire nation into a reality? Well, the answer was to build a new India on the promises that were written right into its constitution.
And here are those promises, laid out so clearly by India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. The service of India meant the ending of poverty, of ignorance, of disease, and of inequality of opportunity. I mean, that was an unbelievably ambitious vision for a brand new, and let's face it, an incredibly complex nation.
And that brings us to our final and maybe most critical question. How are those constitutional promises actually being kept today? Well, a big part of the answer lies in modern movements for rights, especially the right to know. You see, the Constitution was never meant to be just some dusty document in a museum. Its ideals are alive. They are fought for every single day by active citizens who are working to hold the system accountable.
Let's look at a really concrete example, the Right to Education Act from 2009. This law, which is summarized here, takes that big constitutional ideal of education for all and makes it a fundamental, enforceable right for every single child between 6 and 14. And it gets specific. It talks about everything from school infrastructure to what qualifications teachers need to have. It's literally turning a lofty promise into a tangible reality.
And that brings us right back to where we started. The story of India is, of course, unfinished. The source material told us that true understanding comes from asking questions. So after seeing how this nation was imagined, how it was fought for, and how it was all codified into law, the real question is, what questions will you ask next?